course, his burial, his sacrifice for us on the cross and his resurrection. And we kind of stopped there because now we're hearing about what else is going on during the rest of this time. But this, to me, by showing this, is as a revelation of Jesus Christ, is the power, the absolute power he is going to be having for eternity.
And chapter 19 ultimately will say he's King of Kings and Lord of Lords.
Yeah.
So yeah, he'll come to reign, which initially he came to die, to lay down his life for us. He's going to come back to reign as King of Kings. So good.
And this was as he's coming, that's what Rome wanted him, or the Christians or people at that time were looking for their Messiah, the Jews. That's what they wanted to see then.
Their deliverer, yeah. To get him out of Rome. So chapter 1, what's chapter 1 about in Revelation?
Jesus Christ.
Specifically trying to tell you what? What's it revealing?
He is God.
Okay, he's God. And you can't miss that when you go through there. And then the 7 churches are mentioned there. Then he addresses them individually as God, as the one who can rightfully write to them, address them, know everything about them, make promises to them, make accusations against them, tell them areas to straighten out, areas that they're doing really well in. So he does that in 2 and 3. Gets to chapter 4, and what's chapter 4 about, generally speaking? If you have that outline, it would help. God, our Creator. Because remember the book? Another factor we look at, the book goes heaven, Christ, in chapter 1, earth, 7 churches, 2 and 3, back to heaven in chapters 4 and 5. Chapter 4 said he's God, he talked about God the Creator, God the Father as Creator. Chapter 5 is God the Son as Redeemer. All right? Then you get into chapter 6, and what are they doing with chapter 6? They're beginning to break the seals of the scroll that was mentioned in chapter 5 that only Christ is worthy to open. And so he's breaking the seals, but you're not looking into the book, the scroll. You're simply breaking one seal at a time until all 7 are broken, and then you can look into it. And so 6 is not God's judgment. It's simply events that are taking place on earth. Chapter 7 they call kind of an interlude when he's talking about protecting 144,000 Jews, 12,000 from each tribe, and then also seeing the church raptured out in chapter 7. They've come out of the Great Tribulation because at this point it's being cut short and Jesus Christ is returning to judge. And the church is not going to see God's wrath, but it will see tribulation. So they're brought out. Chapter 8 is your last seal being broken, which opens up the whole judgment with the 7 trumpets that are being blown. 8, 9, we get into 10. What is 10 about? What does your outline tell you chapter 10 is there for?
The final judgment delayed no longer.
Okay, the final judgments are delayed no longer.
2 witnesses.
Okay, 2 witnesses in chapter 11, but in chapter 10,
An angelic being.
okay, there's angelic beings giving messages there. Some people call it an interlude. I don't even remember what I put on my outline.
Final judgment delayed no longer.
Okay, but he's telling you it's time. And so what you see is the 7th seal, the 7th trumpet being blown in chapter 11, the 3rd woe being carried out in chapter 11, and everything coming into God's control. The kingdoms had become the kingdom of our Lord and of his Christ. So that's what's happened so far in the letter. We kind of get into the weeds and sometimes we get lost. But just to kind of give you an overview. So we're back in chapter 10. The final judgments are coming. So let's go ahead and read. Who'd like to read verses 1 to 4? The first 4 verses of chapter 10, and we'll jump into the prohibition that's being given here. Okay, Pat? Oh, and then we'll pick another one, Jen.
And I saw another strong angel coming down out of heaven, clothed with a cloud, and the rainbow was upon his head, and his face was like the sun, and his feet like pillars of fire. And he had in his hand a little book which was open, and he placed his right foot on the sea and his left on the land. And he cried out with a loud voice, as when a lion roars. And when he had cried out, the 7 peals of thunder uttered their voices. And when the 7 peals of thunder had spoken, I was about to write, and I heard a voice from heaven saying, seal up the things which the 7 peals of thunder have spoken, and do not write them.
Okay, so what is John being really good at here? Play by play. He's just telling you what's going on. He's not God. He's not in charge of what's happening here. He's simply trying to lay out for us the visions. Here's what I saw. Here's what I heard. That's all he's doing in this book. And so you get into chapter 10, you say, John, you're being really confusing. And it's not John. Why does this seem to jump around a little bit and even cut off what John is being told from us hearing it? What do you pick up, generally speaking, before we look into the questions, on these first 4 verses of chapter 10? John's a really good reporter, but what stands out?
I find it's abrupt change from the previous
Okay,
things that were happening.
the seals, I keep saying seals. The trumpets are being blown. You've had the 5th and the 6th trumpet in chapter 9. And then in chapter 10, it seems like, where'd this come from? Why is this coming out of nowhere here? So it is kind of an abrupt change, so we got to figure out why. What else stands out?
They didn't want the masses to know what was going to happen.
Okay, there's some things God reveals to John that he does not reveal to anyone else. Because John was getting ready to write it down, which means it's understandable. It's something he could convey on paper for other people to read. God said no, or at least the angel here says no. All right? So we don't have to know everything. That's a big thing in the book of Revelation. People get into it and they get really frustrated because of what it doesn't say. You can't do that with Scripture. What have you just become over God? Nosy? The boss, his judge. You're trying to tell him that wasn't a good chapter. You got to rewrite that one. I don't like chapter 10. And God will say back to you, I didn't write chapter 10. There are no chapters. Those are all man-made. You got to be really careful when you get in here and you start separating things by chapter. They're just natural divisions, but God says, I didn't put in chapters. And so he says, and I saw another angel in verse 1. He's carrying on from chapter 9. He's not trying to start something new, but he's bringing out some interesting things. So let's ask some questions, see if we can make sense out of this. What did John see in verse 1?
Another strong angel.
Okay, another strong angel. You looked at the word another, and it means?
Of the same
Someone
kind.
else.
It means what?
Of the same kind.
Okay, another of the same kind. Jan?
Oh, it just said one.
Okay, just another angel, a single angel. Ken?
Oh, I wrote down someone else.
Okay, there's someone else speaking here. Okay, good. But this is allos. When you use, there's 2 Greek words, heteros, allos. When you use heteros, how do we use that today? We call somebody a heterosexual. A heterosexual. Maybe I'm saying that wrong. I mean to say...
Another of a different kind.
Yeah, another of a different kind. So when you're... that sounds weird to me. I'm not coming out right. But when you have heterosexual, when you have that, you have a man and a woman. They're of different kinds coming together. When you have homosexuals, you have the same kind. That's another word. But this word allos is one that also means another of the same kind. So he's the same kind of angel. What was the previous angel in chapter 9? You go back and look at what we just studied. What was that angel?
Then the 5th angel sounded, and I
Okay.
saw a star from heaven.
Okay, that was the 5th angel in verse 13.
Oh, and 13? No, that was the 6th.
Oh, okay. 6th angel sounded, I heard a voice from the 4 horns. These are God's angels carrying out God's judgment. And he gets to chapter 10 and he says, I saw another strong angel. Another of the same kind. So this is a messenger of God. This is a good angel. Question?
Yeah.
Okay.
My problem with that, when I was reading this, was when you said another. So then I went through chapter 1 through 10 to look for some description of a strong angel. There is none.
That's what I,
Yeah.
There is
Isn't
none
the
in
only
there.
place
so why
they
does
use
it
And
say
so
another
that-
strong one?
That's why, and so I went to the interlinear, and it has another in there. So I'm going, how could you say another when you have it described at least one angel strong?
Okay, the interlinear answers your question. Because which word does it put first in there?
Well, I don't
Another.
know at all.
And I saw another angel, strong. So he's saying, I saw another angel. He's just telling you, here's another one, here's another one, here's another one. But then he goes on to describe this new angel he saw, and he's telling you a variety of things. The first thing he says about this angel is it was strong. Question here and then Pat.
Okay, so it wasn't the strongness that was the same, it was just that it was another.
Another angel.
Right.
And so he's trying to tell you it's another good angel. It's another angel from God. Pat, and then we'll go back.
Am I correct that the word strong actually means mighty?
Yeah, and we're going to ask you to fill that in.
It's another mighty angel.
Yeah,
So all the angels are mighty.
maybe not.
No? Okay.
This one is. That's all I can tell you. I mean, they're all scary. Anytime you see them show up at the tomb or wherever they, with Mary or with Zacharias, they're scary. So I don't know if that just because they're strong or because they're big or because they're bright or whatever it might be.
Well, that
Paul?
was exactly, so then I said, okay, if we go down that route, that this is, I'm looking for another strong or mighty angel. None of the other descriptions on any of the angels before were mighty. So then my brain started going back to, wasn't it Michael that was holding the keys to release Satan out of the abyss? Was it Michael? Who is the hold?
Didn't say what angel held the key.
I don't think that angel's identified, but I'm trying to remember what verse you're thinking of.
I know, and I couldn't find it, or else I would have had it written down here.
Okay.
But
9:1.
9:1?
9:1 doesn't, but it doesn't name it.
It doesn't name him, but it
Oh,
says,
okay.
and the key of the bottomless pit was given to him, and he opened the door for the bottomless pit.
But I thought we had in Daniel or someplace that said, Michael was in charge of holding back.
Back then, yeah.
Right.
Well-
So then I was trying to get that to say that Michael was mighty. So then I was trying to make this guy Michael.
Okay, yeah, and you don't want to.
I know that I'm
Yeah.
not supposed to, but I'm trying to figure out why do you have strong and why?
His name only shows up 5 times in the whole Bible. But look at 5:2.
I didn't mean to get us on a rabbit.
That's okay.
A strong angel.
Where?
Revelation 5:2.
Oh,
I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice,
how did I miss that?
But I'm just saying, there is one there. Some people actually think it refers back to that angel because of how he's doing this. I don't know.
but it says
That-
another.
Yeah.
Last week, when we were talking about the 4 angels, release the 4 angels who are bound at the great river Euphrates. And then there was the question, what kind of angels must this be? And one of the answers we gave was powerful, brave, and mighty.
Okay. So
In
there,
last
it's also in 18, there's another mighty angel or strong angel. So there are levels of angels from everything we can tell. There are levels, whether it be Ephesians 6, trying to describe them, principalities, powers, authorities. Anyway, they guesstimate in there. You get back to Michael, and I think it's Daniel 11 that he's talking about. It could be Daniel 8, but he had to come and relieve this other angel who couldn't fight off an angel. So you get the impression from Scripture there's different levels of angels. And Michael is called the archangel. There are not multiple archangels. He is the first angel, the top angel, probably the mightiest one if you look at it that way. Satan and Michael wrestle in Revelation 12, and Michael wins. They have a war. So Michael has to be more powerful than Satan at that point in time. So yeah, you do see that in there. But here he's just trying to bring out that here's another angel, and then he goes in to describe what he's like. And strong, as Pat said, means mighty. What else? 2478.
Power.
Powerful.
And it's used for powerful in body or mind.
Okay, could be used that way. So he has some kind of mighty ability of some sort, that angel. And you kind of look at this, you go, why is this angel supposed to be special here? But we're going to see what he's going to do. How is the angel described? You go on, besides strong, what's his location?
Coming down out of heaven.
And what does that equal or represent?
Coming down from the sky.
Okay, he's descending out of the sky, is all that's trying to tell you. The implication here with this angel, this one of God's angels. So the other implication from that is because angelos means messenger, that God has sent this angel on a mission. All right, and for some reason it's descending out of the sky, coming down out of heaven. How's he dressed?
Clothed with a cloud.
I wore that before on Halloween when I was a kid. But I don't think that's what this means. What does this mean?
I think he's coming down through the clouds.
Okay, through the clouds, but he's clothed with a cloud. Perfect tense. Having been clothed or robed with a cloud, what would that look like or be like?
That word clothed, I mean, it carries the idea of to wrap around.
It's wrapped around him. Interesting. Jesus Christ is going to come back in the clouds of glory. You have to see if there's some similarities. Some people want this strong messenger to be Jesus Christ here. I kind of lean away from that, but I can't prove it isn't.
As he went, and it says he went up in the clouds.
Yeah, so they were seen to be around him, where this one has literally, it's not only wrapped around him, it's a perfect tense. It's wrapped around him in the past and continues to be wrapped around him. What would that represent? Why would you be clothed or robed in a cloud?
Couldn't afford clothes?
Yeah, right. Couldn't afford clothes. I don't think so.
No, I don't either.
Nobody had any clues on what that would be?
I just put clouds surrounded him.
Okay. So it surrounds him. So what does that represent? He's coming down out of heaven, and a cloud, it's singular, has engulfed him.
And I looked at many references for clouds, like at the Red Sea and the cloud the pillar cloud at night. So God Himself uses clouds as a way of bringing a message.
Right. But this seems to be literal in that he is strong, literally. He's coming down, literally, and then describing his head, his face, his feet, and what he has in his hand. So I don't think we're going to go figurative here, which could be some of what you might be leaning toward. Ron?
My brain just triggered here, but when you're saying about a cloud, the first thing I thought about was white, but not necessarily. It could be black or,
Okay, if it's a storm cloud,
yeah,
all right. So it's not trying to tell you a color here.
no. And I just happened to think about it. I mean, first thing I thought would be white.
So what's the context of these first 4 verses? You don't get to hear what the 7 voices of thunder, or 7 peals of thunder that utter their voices. You don't get to hear or understand what that is, but what is the picture here?
Well, I look at it as a totally special angel coming down for whatever purpose God is sending him for.
And what's the
But
context?
He,
9, 11,
Cloud before.
judgment.
oh,
Yeah, it's judgment is what's going on here. So here's a mighty angel coming down in a unique way for John to write down. And what you're seeing here, something really bad is about to happen, especially chapter 11. It's going to finish up. And what they're going to do to the 2 witnesses who aren't there at the moment necessarily. They've been there for 3.5 years, what we're going to figure out when we get in there next week, Lord willing. Question? Okay. So, but there's something new here with judgment, and you start putting these pieces together. It could be dark clouds. It could be the idea that this is a storm approaching. What's he have upon his head?
Rainbow.
Okay, and what does that literally represent? I didn't ask you to look it up again, but we did in the past. Linda?
well, I put a halo, and what Ron had said about dark clouds, when you see the dark clouds, you will see these colors. The rainbows show up when the sun is shining, but usually you'll see the dark clouds of a storm.
Okay. So again, I think he's being literal, but the rainbow upon his head, what does that represent? Who else is going to have that?
Well, it's the rainbow around the throne.
Okay, you saw that earlier in the throne.
Yep.
Does the bow or rainbow show up in the book?
The one covenant of God's promise.
Okay, going way back, and that's where some people want to tie this in, that is representing promises from God.
It shows up after Noah, to show that the Lord will not kill people again
Okay.
by
That he keeps his promises. What has he promised planet Earth?
Judgment.
See, people go, why did God back off? Why didn't he give it another 6,000 years? He's given them what? A chance. He has given them 6,000 years. It's time. When you get to the end of chapter 11, it is finished. It's over. See, people keep wanting more chances, more chances, more chances. What are they doing in the jails and courts today? They think if they just let people out, they'll be nice. They do not understand the human heart. They do not understand how to correct the human heart. God does. And he knows once you've reached a certain point here, you will not come back. So rainbow is only found 2 times in the book of Revelation, the word rainbow, 4:3 and 10:1. But the word bow, which is where we get the word from, just double checking because I didn't look it up. So make sure if it shows up anywhere else, because that's what the word means. It simply
Rainbow
means
is in Ezekiel 1:28. That's the only other place the full word is mentioned.
for bow.
Rainbow,
Okay, rainbow in the Old Testament.
yeah.
Okay, and what I meant to say was halo.
A rainbow around the throne, like an emerald in appearance.
Because this word literally means, the rainbow literally means a circle. It is a round, and when you get back to chapter 4, it's green, which is kind of interesting. That kind of blows us away. But it's a green circle is all he's trying to bring up. So when you look at halo, which I don't think New American Standard uses that word very much, but I'm just double checking.
When he says, I do set my bow in the clouds,
Mhm.
you know, we don't see a circle. We see a bow.
Sometimes we do. I've seen rainbows that are round. You ever seen that? You get close, especially to a waterfall where you're able to see the whole thing, and it's making a lot of mist. It'll be round.
Never seen that.
Now there's no pot of gold. That's the only bad thing about round rainbows. No, just Jim.
I was gonna say that you see it sometimes in certain conditions from the air.
Okay, you can see the whole thing.
Yeah. It's a full circle. It's a circle.
Yep. And
Halo
so,
isn't in the New American.
okay, yep, not used.
Once in the New Living.
All right. So they do use it at someplace in another translation. Okay, so you're going through here. You've got him with a rainbow upon his head, and that just not sure exactly what that represents. To be honest with you, I don't even have that blank filled in. But I write it down when I'm making this up to see if I can find something, and I couldn't find anything. So how about his countenance?
His face was light.
Okay, this is why they keep going back and saying, is this Jesus? Is this Jesus? Is he the messenger? That's all angel means. But he's another strong messenger, so I lean against it. But what does this represent? His face was like the sun. It's very bright, extremely bright.
Brilliant, like
Brilliant.
brightness.
Yep. Knock your eyes out, bright. His feet are like
Pillars of fire.
pillars of fire. Pat was bringing this up earlier, that Christ or God followed them. He was the rock that followed him. He's the cloud by day, the pillar of fire by night. And so again, people lock onto that. But his feet are like pillars of fire. They're not pillars of fire here. But what does it look like? What is this? If you had to draw this, and I can't draw a goat from a pig from a cow, but if you had to draw this, what would it look like? It's pretty impressive. And you would not even come close. That's why I don't go out of my way to show you pictures that people draw, because you're not really seeing what it looked like.
Yeah.
They're doing the best they can, but it's not what John saw. What, Pat?
Well,
Oh, I was just gonna say it'd be colorful.
You okay? Colorful? Pat?
and a column is for support, so this, the support of this angel, or like our legs support us as we stand. So the column I saw as a supportive something.
Okay.
It flames, couldn't it be real flames that, well, of course it's an angel, so I don't know. But columns, I just got off on the idea that columns support.
Okay, but it's not his legs, it's his feet. So when they thought of a column or a pillar, what was at the base of a lot of pillars in that day?
A base.
Yeah, a base. They would widen it out. It may be around something at the base of it, and a lot of what you see today is all that's left of some of the Roman ruins, Greek ruins. But it's just talking about his feet being like pillars. He didn't say it's not fire. He's just talking about they're not pillars, but they're like pillars. So he's trying to bring up something here. They're very stable. They're very strong. They're very secure. That's what you use the base of the pillar for. Jim?
Well, the word fire can also mean lightning, and so I'm wondering if there was that, because we heard the peals of thunder and all that stuff, and I'm just kind of going,
Okay. So how are his feet like lightning?
well, yeah, I still can't describe it any more than I can like fire. Pillars of fire.
But as John looks at him, I think all he's trying to bring out here is the idea of them being very secure, very stable, and he has something in his hand.
And it was open.
It's open. So there again, people go back and go, oh, the only scroll we've seen recently that was open was the scroll that Jesus had. So they keep wanting to make this Jesus, but what kind of scroll is this?
Little.
A little one. That is not how they describe the scroll that Jesus opened. In fact, the one that Jesus opened was written on front and back. It was maxed out. They used all the space they could on it. This is just a little one, and it's already open. There are no seals on it. What does that mean? The information's already been revealed. And so as you look at this, he's got something. It may be information that he's using, he's applying. He's reading and following out. I don't know. It's left very general here. But what did the angel do in verse 2 and 3?
Right foot on the sea and the left on the land.
Okay, what does that represent? This isn't the first time in Scripture this has happened. Leo?
The whole world.
Okay, it could represent the earth in general, because that's the word land. It could just be referring to the earth, and what would that be a picture of? What would John be trying to say? Authority. This guy has authority, both on the sea and on the land. How do you stand on the sea? How deep is the sea?
5 miles at a
In some places, you're Mariana Trench, even 7 miles deep. Varies according to what people tell you. But he's placed his right foot on the sea and his left foot on the land. And the idea of place is the word set. This is trying to bring up authority. He's taken his position. In all the description you just read, he's taken up a position. And so what also happened when the angel, then what was his proclamation?
He cried out with a
loud
loud voice,
voice.
Like what?
as when a lion roars.
Okay, like when a lion roars. So it's a loud voice. This guy is scary.
No
It's-
more delays.
Okay, and he's going to give a message out, but initially his voice is as when a lion roars, but he uses a term for roaring here different from the other times the lion roars. What does this word mean? Bonus points, you can look it up. Bellows. Okay. Very loud. It's a low bellows sound. When a lion roars, normal lion roaring can be heard 5 miles away.
Yeah.
Why are they roaring?
Big distance.
Typically over a kill. If you're at the zoo when they're feeding the lions, they will roar. They picture that meat that's being delivered to them as their kill. They're taking possession. They're basically telling everybody else, stay away. So here he's using this with this bellows, as when a lion bellows with a very loud, low sound. So it's attention getting. His position carries the idea of authority. This proclamation, he's trying to get people's attention. This sound is traveling a long ways. So what also happened when the angel shouted?
The 7 peals of thunder uttered their voices.
Okay, so it's understandable message I put in there just to not miss that. But what happened after the 7 peals of thunder had spoken? What was the intent? John was going to write it down. John could understand what they said. John thought this was part of the message. Wouldn't you like to know what it said?
I wanna know what 7 peals of thunder are, that are.
What's a peal?
Voices.
Okay, they uttered their voices. So again, you may be being figurative here with what's being brought out. I don't know. This is an interesting chapter on many levels. It's very difficult for me to explain a lot of things in here, and yet God included it. He could have gone from chapter 9 to chapter 11 and you would have missed nothing. taking away some of your confusion. Why is it here? It has a purpose. We'll see if we can find it as we keep going on. He's getting ready to write. This is what he did with everything. He got a vision, wrote down what he saw. He heard something, wrote down what he heard. This is what John is doing. He's writing. How old is John? 85, 95. That's the end of his life. As far as we know, all the other disciples who were apostles are dead. They've all been persecuted. They've all died off. Paul would have been the oldest one and probably died off early on, except for James, who was executed. But you're going in here and you're looking at this. He's just doing his job. And what instruction did he receive?
Do not write.
Seal it up. What does that mean?
Don't share it.
Don't share it. Make it secret. You go back, I gave you Daniel 8:26. What do you think he was commanded to not write? Or why do you think he was commanded to not write?
Pertains to future.
Okay, it pertains to the future,
It's
but so does a whole bunch in this book.
No, I know.
But it wasn't the
something-
time that God wanted it revealed.
It wasn't time for it to be revealed. It was to be sealed up or made secret. Daniel did that in Daniel 8. Remember verse 26? Who'd like to read that? You want to read that, Jan, if you can, after you find it? Daniel chapter 8. Major prophets. Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel, Daniel. Called the major prophets because they're just big books. Daniel 8:26.
8:20. Get the right one. Okay. The vision of the evenings and mornings, which has been told, is true, but keep the vision secret, for it pertains to many days in the future.
Okay? Similar reasoning has to do with the future, not to be known now. You are to keep it secret. You are, John, you are to seal it up. But John knew. Think he ever told anybody? Is he told here to never tell anybody? Or is he? What's he say?
seal up and do not write.
Seal up the things which the seven peals of thunder have spoken, and do not write them. Doesn't say do not tell them. But isn't the same implication there? Why was he writing what he was writing?
It wouldn't be a secret if
Yeah.
you told anybody.
Okay? He was writing a revelation. And so the implication here is he's not going to tell anybody either. Have you ever known something really, really big and really, really important and you weren't allowed to tell? What does that do to you? Drives you nuts, doesn't it? You started to let it out, and then, or you let out of just enough. Did you hear? And they go, oh, I can't tell that. And then they just pester you to death. What do you mean? Did I hear what?
It also makes you feel trusted, though.
You don't.
It makes you feel trusted. that
Oh,
someone
okay.
trusts you with something that
So he's trusting John. Hopefully he can trust him as an 85 to 95-year-old who's seen a lot, gone through a lot. He's in prison on the island of Patmos, probably serving hard labor.
He probably doesn't see too many people to tell.
No. Yeah,
And too old.
his Roman guards. Have you ever seen pictures, modern day pictures of Patmos? It'd be a great place to go visit, to go on, take a trip and do a vacation. Really pretty. It's on the Mediterranean.
So the thing with this that had me baffled last week, and you reminded me, is the tendency to think this is in line with all the trumpet stuff going on. But like you told me last week, Revelation's not chronological.
No.
So somewhere this little bit of a vision happened to him, and it's not necessarily in this order.
No, and chapter 11 goes way out of order because
Yeah.
the two witnesses are around for 3.5 years. You can't get that between the sixth and seventh trumpet. So no, he's jumping around with some of what's going on. So you can bring that up next week if you have questions about that. But the sixth, seventh trumpet fit within a very short time frame. The Great Tribulation begins at the middle of the 70th week, so we only have 3.5 years. The Great Tribulation, according to Matthew 24:22, is amputated. It's cut short. with the coming of Christ. Then you have whatever's left, whatever the Great Tribulation used up of the 3.5 years is all you have left for the 70th week, the day of the Lord to take place in, for God's wrath to be poured out. That's why it's an unknown. We don't know how long it takes. Either one's bad. Great Tribulation, bad. Day of the Lord, bad. The difference is Christians will be there for the Great Tribulation unless they die. They will not be there for the day of the Lord's wrath. So that's the big difference between the two. And I know some of that may be a little confusing. But what is shared here is John has a strong angel coming down out of heaven, clothed with a cloud, rainbow upon his head, face like the sun, feet like pillars of fire, and a little book in his hand which was open, places his right foot on the sea, his left foot on the land, cries out with a loud voice when a lion roars, and says what?
We don't know.
We don't know. But it's not the seven peals of thunder either. So does John reveal some of that down the road? We'll have to see. But the seven peals of thunder? No. You may not share that, John. So God has given him some things that he needs to know, maybe assurances that he needs to pick up, maybe a reminder, because John's only going to be around for a little while longer, and they're going to execute him, or he's going to die from hard labor. So he gets some information, maybe to encourage him or to give him hope, but it's not necessary for us to see that yet. We may receive that information if we're still on earth before Christ returns. We may see with our own eyes actually happen. What he's telling them is for the future. So, question there. Did I kind of close that one up? So, I wrote down there, it was not information that God wanted everyone to know. And then I said, not permitted to record information on paper, only for John. That's all I put down on that section. Any questions with the first 4 verses that I can answer? Don't give me one I can't answer. Interesting little chapter.
Almost like you have to be a scholar to understand.
Well, it's not so much scholarship as it's just there's hardly anything there.
Yeah, well, that's what it is.
John's telling you what's going on, but hardly anything for us to pick up from.
Yeah,
Just for John. When you get to the next section, someone will want to read 5 to 7. Jan, did you want that one too?
I can read
All
that
right.
one. Then the angel whom I saw standing on the sea and on the land lifted up his right hand to heaven and swore by him who lives forever and ever, who created heaven and the things in it, and the earth and the things in it, and the sea and the things in it, that there will be delay no longer. But in the days of the voice of the 7th angel, when he is about to sound, then the mystery of God is finished, as he preached to his servants the prophets.
Okay, is this what the angel says? He cried out with a loud voice as when a lion roars. Is this the message he's giving? It gives you more background. The one whom you saw standing on the sea, so who is this angel?
One standing on the sea
Okay, one standing on the sea,
and on the land.
on the land, another messenger of God in a position of authority. And what's this angel doing again? He repeats it, the position.
Standing on the sea and the land.
And doing what?
Lifted right hand.
With his right hand lifted up to heaven. Very common method when you're getting ready to declare an oath used in Scripture by a number of others. Ken?
Oh, no,
Oh,
I was,
okay, you're just exercising your hand.
I was lifting up my right hand.
Oh, you're living, you're acting it out. Very good. Okay, so he's in that position, and what's the promise that comes from him? This is the part I don't think we pick up well, and I failed by not asking to look up the word, swore. But what is the promise?
No more delay.
Okay, no more delay. There should be be delay no longer.
The mystery of God will be accomplished.
Okay, and what's the word swore? Anybody look up the word swore?
Yeah, it's an oath.
Okay, literally carries the idea of place himself under oath. That's what that word means. That doesn't come out in the English translation, and I don't know how well it came out in the Jack Ebner translation. Let me look at it here. Yep, I put on there, made a solemn promise, in parentheses, oath, by him who lives forever and ever. So who did he swear by? I only gave you 2 spots here because I was looking for 2 things.
The one
How do you describe God with that one? The one who is
From the beginning to the
Eternal.
end.
eternal. I gave you room for the word eternal. You could write other words in there as well. And then what's the second part he's trying to bring out? Okay, creator of all is the second one. He is the eternal one. He's the creator. When you get down in here, I don't know why they do this, but the word "the" should be in front of heaven. He created, you notice how it's in front of earth and sea? Should be in front of heaven. But we don't talk like that. We don't say he created the heaven and the things in it, and the earth and the things in it, and the sea and the things in it. But it's trying to bring out that he is the creator of all. This is what he's trying to bring up. He swore by him, the one who is under the ages of the ages. That's what forever and ever means. He placed himself under an oath by him, the eternal one, by him who is the creator of all things. And what was the oath he placed himself under? What was the angel's message? There should be delay no longer. The word delay simply means time. That there should be time no longer. And so he's saying when you don't have any more time, you're not delaying, you're not putting it off. The word time here in the Greek is chronos, where we get chronology. It just means time. So there's going to be time no longer. What's he leading up to? This angel that spoke and described in 1 to 4, and now he's speaking in verse 6. What's there no longer delay for? The final judgment. The seventh trumpet is the seventh bowls or vials that are going to show up in chapter 15 and 16. Remember 1 to 11? It's done in chapter 11. 15 and 16, John writes and gives you details back in to explain the seventh trumpet. It's kind of like, and I'm not a drinker, never was, but I was told, if you line up at the bar and you want to get drunk, you guys told the guy, line me up 7 shot glasses. 7 of them, boom, boom, boom. And I walk out and I go, poof, 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 poof. I don't know how much alcohol that is. I don't know what the proof is, but I know you shouldn't drink like that. The reason they're in those little bitty glasses is because it's really potent. And this is what the seventh trumpet is going to be. The seventh vials or bowls are quick delivery. They're shallow little things that you can easily dump. And that's what we're going to see when we get to 15, 16 someday if we live that long. Right? But it's going to be a delay no longer. When God gets to that seventh trumpet, boom, 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 boom. And it's no longer a third of this and a third of this and a third of this. It's all of this, all of this, all of this. And you're going to notice the contrast. And this is what's going to happen at the end of chapter 11. This is what this angel is leading up to. So what was the angel's message? Delay no longer. What does this mean? God's long suffering has what?
Season is now, time is now.
Okay.
Time is now, the season
Okay,
is
the
now.
time's now. So the one who said he was not willing that any should perish, his long suffering has come to an end. Is that, you were going to say something along that line? Right, that's what he's trying to bring up. It's over. We get really sad when vacation's over, when our favorite car got in a wreck and destroyed and they totaled it, never going to drive it again. When things come to an end, that you know, you can pick some stuff. Relationships come to an end and it's really, really sad. And maybe it's by death. But you're looking at here, and this is God's patience, God's long suffering, God's withholding his wrath is coming to an end. And I don't think people understand what that's going to be like. This is not what God wanted. He's not rejoicing when the wicked perish. That's not his desire in the book of Ezekiel. How's he say it there? I just went blank. He talks about the wicked in the book of Ezekiel, and it's a common phrase that you've all heard. And it's not in my brain at the moment, so I'm going to find it for you so it becomes common again. The way of the wicked shall perish, but what he says there, Ezekiel 33:11, God takes no pleasure in the death of the wicked. He wants the wicked to turn from his evil way or from his way and live. But he says that a few times. See if I can find another one. they turned away as their man can justify against the Lord. I can't find it anymore, but I know they're in there. So it could have been earlier in Ezekiel. That word wicked is used quite a few times. Warn the wicked from his evil way in 3:18. From his wicked way that he may live in 3:18. Warn the wicked. If you have not encouraged the wicked, you have encouraged the wicked not to turn. Turn from their evil way. There it is, 18:23. God takes no pleasure in the death of the wicked. That's another one that I was really thinking of. And then 33:11, no pleasure in the death of the wicked. So there's at least two of them that I found real quick. Linda?
And that is in contrast to Psalms 116:15, is precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his godly ones.
Good contrast, good example. But again, people think when the time comes for the seventh trumpet and for the final boom, 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 boom of the 7 bowls, 7 vials, that makes God happy, and it doesn't. People get the wrong idea of God. He isn't sitting there where he's acting like I can't wait to nail somebody. That's how we are. That's what we're like when there's an enemy who's really, really nasty and done something really, really bad to us. We can't wait for them. Remember, that's how David was in the Psalms that he wrote sometimes. They're called imprecatory Psalms. And David did that a lot. That's not God. That's interesting to me.
Yeah, and yet he was a man after God's own heart.
Yeah.
I mean, I know not that.
In a lot of ways, but he was also a sinner. So as you look at this, you're going down into verse 7. When would something happen according to verse 7?
Age of the voice of the seventh angel.
Okay, when he is about to sound. So we realize what's going on, that this delay would be no longer. It's coming with the seventh angel, which is chapter 11, verse 20 something, verse 15.
15.
And goes down to verse 19. So there's no 20 something. Just have to make sure I clear up my brain. And so what was going to happen in verse 7? Then the
Mystery of God is finished.
Okay, mystery of God is finished. Remember, he just told you, he's going back to some things that were uttered. 7 peals of thunder had spoken. They uttered their voices. They cried out. That is a mystery. Then the mystery of God is finished. And so there's some things that we don't know. Don't know what it's going to be like. You looked at the word mystery, 3466.
Secret.
It's a secret.
What God has
Particular
not previously revealed.
And what?
What God has not previously revealed.
Okay, what God has not previously revealed, some kind of secret teaching. Pat?
I had a particular truth on details of the Christian revelation.
Previously, but unknown. If it's still a mystery,
Particular truth.
a lot of mysteries are revealed. This one has not been. It will be. That's when the mystery of God is finished. Don't know what that'll be. But it's something previously unknown. What's the word finished? 50, 55.
Complete.
It means it's completed, realized,
Come to
Fulfilled.
fruition.
fulfilled. It's come to fruition,
Brought to an end.
come to an end, accomplished.
Is it related, it says telos, is
Yeah.
it related to teleos?
Yeah. The idea of perfect or complete. It'll be, God will be right and justified in all that happens. So how had God used his Old Testament prophets? I'm not going to look up all these verses, but how had he used them in the past?
Real end times, real what's happening.
Okay, he gave what about end times? How to use prophets? I'm looking for a verb in there.
Tell you what's going to happen, you know.
He told them things about the end times, okay?
What's going to happen.
He preached to
He
his
preached to them
the prophet.
his messages that he wanted them to pass on. You see in Daniel, he's given understanding in a vision. In Daniel 12, words to be concealed. Amos 3 reveals secret counsel. Habakkuk 2, he records a vision, inscribed it on tablets. So there's some examples he did with those prophets that he passed on information. Very important for us to know and to receive. But what happened to prophets who were not God's prophets? How do we know they weren't God's prophets?
Because what they said was going to happen doesn't happen.
Okay, Typically, God gave a near fulfillment and a far fulfillment. When the near fulfillment didn't come true, you knew they weren't God's prophet. They couldn't have one mistake. They had about 1,000, as you would say in baseball. No mistakes whatsoever. When you get into Nostradamus, when you get into, who's the woman that prophesied? They're all fading out. Nobody knows who they are anymore. Her son became a believer in spite of her atheistic.
Margaret Sager?
Oh, there's a bunch of them. Mary Baker Eddy, there's a bunch of them. But when they prophesied and made mistakes, it should have told people, you're not God's prophet. It's not a 50-50. It's not a 75-25. It's 1,000%. You cannot make a mistake. And there'll be an exact fulfillment in the future that will tell us you're God's prophet. And then the prophecy you gave about the future that we can't see yet, we know will also come true. And we're talking about exact details, like about the birth of Christ and so many things that were fulfilled at his birth. So as you look down through, you get to the last section. So I want to read 8 to 11. God uses prophets. We're reading one of them. It's John. Okay? Rocky?
And the voice which I heard from heaven, I heard again speaking with me and saying, Go, take the book which is open in the hand of the angel who stands on the sea and on the land. So I went to the angel, telling him to give me the little book. And he said to me, Take it and eat it. It will make your stomach bitter, but in your mouth will be sweet as honey. I took the little book out of that angel's hand and ate it. And in my mouth it was sweet as honey. And when I had eaten it, my stomach was made bitter. And they said to me, You must prophesy again concerning many peoples and nations and tongues and kings.
So what did John hear again in verse 8? The voice that he heard out of heaven, and you go back to verse 4. I gave you there, and you'll see that same voice. So this continues. We didn't get to know what the 7, what are they called?
Peals of thunder.
Peals of thunder said, but this angel's involved in the whole chapter. What 2 things did the voice command?
Go and take.
Go and take are the 2 words. Embark means to go, and that word literally means depart. Withdraw yourself. Vines brings out that this typically is by stealth or to do something quietly. No fanfare. Don't make a big fuss. Just go off and do what you're supposed to do. So he's kind of giving them a general term for going. And then he says embrace. He got these words from that big scary angel. What does the word embrace mean? The word take.
Lay hold of,
Lay hold of.
receive,
Receive.
Take possession.
Take possession. Accept. Obtain. So he's going after this little book that lies open in the hand of this angel. Little scroll. So it's available for him to read. It's not sealed up. It's not waiting for some authority to come in and break the seals. But he's gone in there. So how did John respond verbally to this angel?
Ask for the little book.
He went and told him to give me the little book. To the big scary angel. With eyes that are, and face and feet and all that he represented. Here's puny little John. Give me the book, please. That's kind of how he's kind of presenting it, right? And what 2 things did the angel command John to do at this point? First, embrace, same word, take it, lay hold of it, obtain it, accept it, receive it. And what's the second one? Eat it. Why did I put devour? Because that's one of the words that defines and consume it, eat it up, feast on it, digest it.
Eat until finished.
Until it's finished, so you're consuming the whole thing. John takes it in there, and how did the angel say John would react? What about his stomach?
Bitter.
Make your stomach bitter. The word bitter means
sour,
sour,
irritated,
irritated,
upset.
upset, acid indigestion, kind of a harsh reaction to it. Anytime you eat a scroll, that's probably a typical reaction, but this is trying to get across a message. How about his mouth? What will it be like in his mouth? Sweet as honey. Can you describe any food that's sweet as honey, but it really messes up your gut? A lot of processed foods today. If you read the label, they have, when you got to get your glasses to read the label, don't eat it.
Ice cream.
Ice cream. If you're not supposed to eat ice cream, it irritates your stomach, but sure tasted good in the mouth. What's he trying to get at here? In your mouth to be sweet as honey. How about the word sweet? It carries that idea of being fresh, but it's, what's the Greek word here? Glucose, which is our word glucose, where we get the word for sugar. The Greek, when the Greek uses a U and you bring it over into English, don't ask me why. They always transliterate the U to a Y. But in this case, it's glucose. It's still the U. But I'm saying when you see some of these, you get kind of lost in them. This one came across pretty cleanly, but a lot of times it's not. And so anyway, I don't know why I brought that up. I shouldn't even mention it. But it can carry the idea of being fresh. It's used in James 3 that way, that the water was fresh or sweet, is what he's trying to bring up there, not salty or bitter or something wrong with it. So how did John obey in verse 10? He took the scroll out of the angel's hand
And ate it.
and he ate it. That's pretty straightforward. He devoured it. That is just fascinating to me. Why does God teach us sometimes in ways that are so unique? What's he trying to do with John? He's trying to include his 5 senses. What of his 5 senses was used here? He looks at the little book. He takes it with his hand, so he's touching it, puts it in his mouth, tastes it. What's left? Did it crunch when he ate it? Did he hear it? Did he smell it? If you can't smell when you're eating, you don't taste. So it's just fascinating how God brings in our personal senses. Bev and I have talked a lot in the past, and there's a lot of people, not just women, who would love God just to kind of come down and give him a hug some days. Just give me a hug and tell me everything's okay. Some of us are like that. Others of us are cold and hard, and we don't need hugs.
Talking about anybody.
In fact, you try to give them a hug and they just go, "Ugh." They don't hug back. We're all different. So in some ways, I picture John. Remember, he's the one that laid right in the breast of Jesus. He leans back. He probably had breath mints because he's talking right in his face. But it's like they're different. And this is John. And he's bringing John into the message John's way. That's all I see here. I think it's fascinating that God met John right where he's at. So Paul, don't worry. He's not going to do it to you. But again, what happened? How did John react with his mouth? And they reversed the whole thing.
Sweet as honey.
It was sweet as honey. It was a joy. It was a delight. But what about his stomach?
Made it bitter.
Made it bitter. It was very unsettling. How was this similar to Paul in Romans 9, 1-3? This would stretch you a little bit, but it's there. Romans 9, 1-3. Do I have a volunteer, or you want me to read it? This is what individual? Okay, Linda? This is Paul. What did Paul say in Romans 9, 1-3?
I am telling the truth in Christ. I am not lying. My conscience testifies with me in the Spirit that I have great sorrow and increasing grief in my heart. For I could wish that I myself were cursed, separated from Christ for the sake of my brethren, my kinsmen according to the flesh.
What is he going to go into in chapters 9, 10, 11? What is Paul doing here that's similar to how John is responding? First off, what did Paul also do, just like John? 5th word. He told the truth. It's what John is eating. He's eating the truth in this little scroll. Okay? Paul's also telling the truth. There's some things here he didn't want to tell his kinsmen. He says, I'm willing to take their place. Because the message of Romans 9, 10, 11 to Israel is not a good message. Just like the message that John is going to give here, it's going to make his stomach bitter. Paul's also telling the truth, but he had great sorrow and unceasing grief in his heart, just like John is having this grief in his gut. What do you think this message is that he's eating? What is this little scroll trying to bring out? That would be similar to what Paul's wrestling with. What's the context again? Judgment.
I think it's, the sweetest honey is that Christ is returning, but then
Okay.
what has to take place to finish it
Yep.
off.
Delay no longer.
Yeah.
The seventh angel is about to sound. Mystery of God is going to be finished.
The wrath of God.
So this is wrath. So I think what Paul is doing is, on the one hand, I'm giving you my personal interpretation. On the one hand, Paul is greatly relieved. Finally. Finally, his judgment's come.
John, not Paul.
John. Paul's going to do it too, but John. John is saying, finally, his judgment's coming. It is sweet to my taste. I've been waiting for this all my life. I've been watching. I've been beaten. I've been mistreated. I've been jailed. I've been stoned. I've been shipwrecked. He goes through all this stuff. Finally, it's going to be over. I'm going to get a new body. I'm going to be set free and to reign with Christ. But then what does he realize in his gut when he starts to digest this a little bit?
All those who are going to be
All the people that are going to die, just like Paul in Romans 9, 10, 11. My kinsmen, whom I love dearly, I'm willing to take their place, is what he's trying to bring up. John's feeling the same thing. A little differently, present a little bit differently, but I think that's the message of what he's trying to do here as he interacts with all of this. And so who are they in verse 11?
The seven peals
of thunder.
Okay, could be. You think the seven peals of thunder that he wasn't allowed to write about are the ones speaking? Who are the other they that are in here? Jim? And then we'll go to a question.
The strong angel and the seventh angel.
Okay, and the seventh angel, those two are in there also. It's probably just the angels are communicating something to him. Paul?
Well, that's what I put down. I put down the seventh angel, and then when I started looking at it, the interlinear that I have, the NLT, the NIV, the King James, do not use the word they.
Okay.
They use the word he.
Because they want it to be
The seventh
Jesus
angel.
Christ, probably.
All of those?
A lot of them lean toward this mighty strong angel with his feet and all of that. They lean toward Christ. I just see some things here. I don't think that's who it is. See, there's similarities to his scroll that's sealed, that he's breaking, to this one, and his might, and he's the authority on the sea and on the land and all of that. But you can find this elsewhere in the Bible that also is not Christ.
Why can't it just be the seventh angel?
Or it's another mighty angel like the seventh angel is what he's trying to describe. But anyway, that's why they'll interpret that way, but they shouldn't, because the word is they in the Greek, and they should translate it they. It's a plural. That doesn't make sense, so they're trying to make their translation understandable and take away confusion from people. But in doing so, they're making an interpretation that may be wrong. Jim?
I was just going to say that. I looked at it and it's plural.
Yep.
It's clearly plural, so.
So in the context here, the seven peals of thunder, we don't know what they're saying. And you could say, well, now they're speaking something that they are saying, don't know. But we do have the seventh angel, and we do have another mighty angel. And so they're talking to him, and what do they say? What was it necessary for John to do?
Prophesy.
To prophesy again. And to whom, as I put it?
Many peoples,
Okay, many peoples,
nations.
nations, tongues,
and kings.
kings. That's interesting that they throw kings in there. Where did they go to typically? Who did John and Paul and Daniel and different ones end up in front of? Yeah, a lot of world leaders that ultimately they got to, because they were the ones who carried so much weight in their kingdom. And he says, you're going to prophesy some more. So even though we're coming to the end of chapter 11, which will be there very shortly, coming to the end of the seventh trumpet, he says, John, there's a lot more. So he's going to give him the second half of the book of Revelation. And as we study it, I will keep taking you back from that, back into the first half, and showing you why when chapter 12 starts, it's the birth of Christ in Bethlehem. And you're going, what? How do we get back to that? He's presented in chapter 1 as God in all of his glory. Powerful, magnificent, blazing. And now he comes back and he's a baby? The book is not chronological. Why would he do that? Because he's showing you in chapter 12, Satan goes after him. He's trying to bring out what the whole struggle is about. The one we're revealing in the book of Revelation, who is God in chapter 1, came as a baby. Satan went after him. Then it transitions really quick over to the Antichrist and the false prophet in chapter 13. And to that same baby standing on the Mount of Olives in chapter 14. So John is just being given a lot of information, revelation about Jesus Christ, that's helping us understand who he is, why he came, and how he's victorious. And yes, there's a lot in this book. Don't get frustrated. This is my fourth time through, first time through making up study guides. I've never taught through it like this before. This opens up a whole bunch of questions that you don't have to answer on Sunday morning. Especially when you don't know that people ask questions. You just talk. And they have to sit out there and get frustrated or ask a question on Sunday night. I have to make sure I'm explaining that as we go through this way. So I'm learning along with you. But don't lose sight of the fact, the big picture. It's a revelation of Jesus Christ. He's writing to 7 literal churches in the first century. He has a message for them to get, to respond to. And like all the other writings in the Bible, it ultimately is valuable for us, profitable for us to learn from. Linda, question?
I was just going back to when we were talking about who are they here. And when you go back just up here to, in the same chapter there, and he, we're looking at verse 3, and he cried out with a loud voice as one of laborers, and when he had cried out, the 7 peals of thunder had spoken. I was about to
They uttered their voices, and when the 7 peals of thunder had spoken, I was about to write.
So they had spoken there.
Right, to
And
John.
So, yeah, so I always thought when we had studied before, we always had to go back to, in the verse, to looking for who were the ones that
Right,
they had
in the
spoken.
context.
Yeah,
So the fact that what they said John wasn't supposed to write down kind of causes me to back off from them being the spokespeople. Not that it can't be, so it could be. But you also have another mighty angel, and you have the 7th angel that this book, without a chapter break, comes right off of. So the context is the 7th, 6th angel, whichever that angel is, and then the mighty angel. So we don't know. It's just they spoke to him, and there's got to be a they there somewhere,
Well, yeah.
not a he.
But 10:7 is saying, but in the days the voice of the 7th angel, when he is about to sound, when the mystery of God is finished.
Very good.
So that's just before.
Right, but that's coming.
I don't.
So, yeah.
That's.
So is he speaking to him already, even though he hasn't blown his trumpet? Possibly. So a lot of unknowns in that chapter. I'm glad to get through it and move on. The next chapter, there's a lot of detail with the 2 witnesses. A lot of misunderstanding today that if you just read your Bible, it's pretty simple and pretty clear. So I encourage you to read. I only gave you half of the 2 witnesses, verses 1 to 6, and that'll cover next week. We'll have plenty to talk about. Then we'll go 7 to 13. You get the other half. First half is what they're doing. The second half is what they do to them. So it's an easy way to break the 2 in half. So work on that. Don't get frustrated. Ask God your questions. Someday he'll answer them for you.
We can't ask you.
No, I don't know. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for your word. What's amazing is the big picture. And what's also amazing is your heart. You love man. You are not willing that any should perish. You sent your own son to die for Hitler and for Mussolini and for Mao Zedong, and on it goes. Any enemy we can think of, you sent Jesus to die for them because you love them. You don't want them to perish. Help us, Father. Sometimes we don't want to talk. Sometimes we're afraid to share the gospel with people, and they aren't even a big scary angel, and we're still afraid. Give us a greater boldness. Give us a greater love for people like you have. And help us to share the message about your son, Jesus Christ, like John did, and to help people come to know him. We need your help every day. Thank you for the reminder tonight. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Okay, mic's off.
right?